So, what if I told you there's an invisible pattern, a kind of hidden geometry that connects the flow of trillions of dollars around the entire world? A pattern that actually explains why we're seeing these massive, almost unbelievable investments in things like AI and infrastructure, but we're still facing these huge, persistent problems. Today, we're going to break down an idea that says this pattern is very real, and that just being able to see it could be the key to solving some of our biggest challenges.
And this quote right here, it gets to the heart of the mystery. You've got the world's top analysts, I'm talking S&P, McKinsey, Gartner, all spotting the same huge trends: the AI boom, the strain on our power grids, the desperate need for new infrastructure. And you know what? They're all brilliant, and they're all absolutely right. But they're each seeing only their little piece of the puzzle. They're missing the underlying structure, this recursive geometry that connects everything they're seeing.
So, what's the real cost of this massive collective blind spot? Well, it's this number, a staggering $7 trillion. And get this, that's an annual cost. This isn't money for new, exciting investments. No, according to the source material, this is an annual fragmentation tax. It's a hidden cost we all pay every single year, simply because our systems are so disconnected, they're basically working against each other. It's money we're forced to spend just to patch up the problems that this very fragmentation creates in the first place.
Okay, so let's dive into this $7 trillion blind spot. We're going to take a look at what all the experts are seeing and then, more importantly, reveal what they're all missing. You can see how each of these giants is totally focused on a critical piece of the puzzle. S&P, they rightly point out that the power grid is the #1 bottleneck for AI. McKinsey, they're tracking the trillions. Yep, another $7 trillion pouring into new infrastructure. You've got Gartner mapping the software, Accenture designing the power systems for data centers, and the World Economic Forum, well, they're basically just trying to get everyone in the same room to talk to each other. They're all doing incredibly important work, but it's all happening inside their own silos. And this, right here, this is the central question of the whole thing. If all of these massive forces, AI, capital, infrastructure, are obviously interconnected, then what is the invisible process, the hidden engine, that's actually linking them together? What's the secret rulebook that all this capital is following without even realizing it? And the answer, according to the source we're looking at, is a hidden 4-phase cycle. Think of it like a recurring loop that dictates how capital gets spent, how enormous amounts of value get lost, and exactly why we keep ending up with these massive, fragmented, and seemingly unsolvable problems.
So here are the 4 phases. It all starts with a beneficiary, say a company, investing capital. Why? Because they're responding to some kind of market pressure. But then comes the key step, what the source calls invisible intelligence, which is really just a lack of shared data. And because of that, value just leaks out of the system. This then forces someone, somewhere, to spend defensive capital just to fix the leak, which, you guessed it, starts the whole cycle over again.
Let's really zero in on phase 3, invisible intelligence, because this is where the magic or the disaster happens. This is all about the cracks in the system. Just imagine a power company, a data center, and a local school district all operating in the same county. They each have their own data, their own spreadsheets, their own goals. The power company has no idea about the school's budget crisis, and the data center isn't really seeing its full impact on the local water supply. Value, real money, just leaks out in the empty space between them.
And what happens when that cycle, investment, leakage, and defensive spending just repeats over and over again for decades? You get this: $348 trillion. That's the accumulated global debt. And this isn't some abstract economic number. It's the bill. It's the receipt for years and years of paying that fragmentation tax. It represents a literal mountain of problems that have been kicked down the road, all because we could never see the whole picture at once.
Okay, so that was the big global theory. Kind of heavy, right? So let's bring it down to earth and see how this fragmentation cycle actually plays out in the real world, in one specific county that is under some serious pressure.
Welcome to Loudoun County, Virginia. Now, you may not have heard of it, but this place is basically ground zero for the entire global data economy. It's where tech giants, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, you name it, are building these city-sized data centers to power the AI revolution. All those huge abstract forces we've been talking about, they're all colliding right here, right now.
This chart just perfectly illustrates the fragmentation we're talking about. I mean, look at these different pressures. You have the local utility Dominion Energy dealing with an unprecedented strain on their grid because of AI. Then you have the data centers themselves under pressure to meet their water compliance rules.
And at the exact same time, the local community is staring down a $412 million backlog for school renovations. 3 huge problems, all happening in the same place, all being treated as completely separate issues.
So, in response to its pressure, Dominion Energy is making a truly massive investment, over $4 billion in grid upgrades. And look, from their siloed perspective, this is a completely necessary and logical response to the insane demand for power. It makes perfect sense. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. In that exact same system, in that very same county, there's an estimated $687 million in what the source calls trapped value. This is money from things like grid congestion fees and water compliance payments. This money could be used to solve other problems like, I don't know, fixing the schools. But because of that invisible intelligence gap, that disconnect, it just stays fragmented, it leaks out, and it never, ever gets connected to the problems it could easily solve.
All right, so if the problem is this deep fragmentation and invisibility, what on earth is the solution? Well, it's not necessarily some fancy new technology. It's about a fundamental shift in how we see and verify information, a move from what's called unattested truth to attested truth.
So unattested truth, that's our world right now. The utilities grid data is real. The school's budget data is also real, but they're totally disconnected. Attested truth, on the other hand, creates a shared, verifiable view of reality. Think of it like this. Instead of just a PDF report, imagine a sensor on a water pipe that can digitally prove I am using exactly X gallons right now, and the utility, the data center, and the local government can all see and trust that data instantly. When that happens, value can actually circulate between them, instead of just leaking away into thin air.
And when you can do that, you literally invert the entire broken cycle. Pressure is no longer some surprise crisis you have to react to, it's a visible pattern you can plan for. That $7 trillion in defensive spending can become what's called composed capital, money that actually creates new value by solving multiple problems at once. And that monumental $348 trillion debt stock, we can finally start to recompose it, turning fragmented IOUs back into whole, functioning, valuable systems.
Okay, let's wrap this up by pulling back and returning to that big picture. What does this massive shift in perspective actually mean for the future that all those firms like McKinsey and S&P are trying so hard to predict?
You see, in the end, this isn't really a story about building a new app or a smarter AI. It's much bigger than that. It's about achieving a completely new level of shared visibility. If those top analysts could see this whole interconnected cycle, their reports would look totally different. They wouldn't just see a $7 trillion infrastructure project, they'd see the $7 trillion fragmentation tax sitting right underneath it, just waiting to be captured and reinvested.
And this leaves us with the final, pretty provocative question. The cycle is already running. The capital is already moving. This invisible pattern is already there, just waiting for someone to see it. All the pieces are on the table. So the only real question left is, who's going to be the first to connect the dots and finally see the whole picture?